find many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view.
The reason I use that is I feel like that's what I felt this entire show was.
Yeah.
If there's a mission statement of this show,
It is that many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view.
That's right.
which is why they tell the show in different points of view.
Yeah.
And even by the end, I kind of am like, I don't know who was right, who was wrong.
Right.
It's not. It's. We'll get into it, but it's different than the Last Jedi moment of you thought this. Here's what really happened, and here is kind of our mission statement in the final act as far as what Ryan Johnson is trying to tell you about. What
I think
Luke
they call
says
that
on
I
Crate.
think they call it a Rashomon technique.
It is a Rashomon.
Yeah.
Yep.
From the old movie.
Yeah. That was which I didn't even know that technique until Last Jedi, and then all of a sudden,
Like, oh, that's a thing.
Looked up of the
So
this,
somehow
this,
Ryan
this.
goes even deeper into the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Turns out he gets into the actual.
Yeah.
2 seconds in, we're on
techniques
Ryan. I
of,
love it.
We love Ryan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But are those cameras on?
They're on.
I think
Welcome
they're on.
back
Whoa.
to the Star Wars Guys podcast. As always, we're your hosts, Mike,
Hello there.
myself, Nate. Hello there. And you know him well, Uncle.
Hello there.
We are excited to discuss Acolyte, the finale of Acolyte.
We haven't come up with our own Acolyte song yet. I keep thinking, Ahsoka. We don't have an
The
Acolyte.
Acolyte. The Acolyte.
The
The Acolyte. The Acolyte.
No, for some reason that turned into, I thought that was that started going like a little Aladdin, like the Acolyte, he had them 40 kids, like Alibaba had them 40 thieves.
Yeah. We're excited. We're excited to dive into it. Finale episode of The Acolyte. There's a lot to discuss here. So
Whether it'll be the season 1 finale or the
True.
series finale, that'll
True.
be part of the discussion. We will
a
find
lot
out.
of questions answered and a lot more that have come. So I'm
There's a lot
excited
to
to.
talk about.
There's a lot to talk about. We're going to dive into it. And we usually start with overall thoughts. What do you guys think?
Uncle, kick us off.
Happy, sad, bittersweet. We're just looking at bigger issues. I'm afraid it might be the last of the show, but I thought it was fantastic. I
The
thought it was
finale,
fantastic.
The finale, the show.
The show?
I guess we can do the whole.
Yeah.
Hey,
overall,
listen,
too.
Let's do finale and
Listen.
then also say overall.
Yeah.
There is stuff that I shake my head at. I do. I'm like, what? Like,
Yeah.
when we asked about all the witches died, I was like, how? What? That doesn't make any. And there's a few things that trouble me, but I loved we got the journey to the dark side. We got it.
Yeah.
More than a clear surprise, the good guy, the heroine
Yeah.
turns straight up.
Yeah.
In a show in which you
Yeah.
kind of always feel like they're not going to do that.
No.
Or you feel like that's what it's setting up, but you think they're not going to end on a somber, like the good guy goes
That's
bad.
right.
Other than obviously we had that with Anakin, but that was
Yeah.
because we already knew where
You
Darth
knew where it
Vader was
ends.
coming.
Right.
Yeah.
So they broke. I think they did some daring things, and I thought it was awesome. It was Shakespearean to me because
Yeah,
nobody
it
was
was.
safe. The end of some of Shakespeare, just everybody's dead. right?
Yeah.
It's
You're right.
kinda
Nobody was
that
safe. None of the. Yeah.
Shakespeare
thing.
likes
And
witches
evil.
too.
Evil has triumphed in all ways.
Yeah.
Even on the side of the Jedi, you can see that
Yes.
the legacy of a Jedi is destroyed when it's not true.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the villain has prevailed, and I thought it was remarkable, and it makes me angry that people have been seeing it and take it at face value instead of really enjoying what's there. They
Yeah.
pick at it. You just pick at it.
Yeah.
And if you do
Yeah.
that with anything, you can take away you can make it not fun.
Yeah.
But I thought it was unbelievable. The acting was amazing. I love the storyline of the characters. How the Jedi, what I thought was going to be the High Republic really it wasn't, but for some reason I was thinking it was going to be the Jedi in their glory
Yeah.
It was the beginning of their fall, and you
Yeah.
could see it.
Yeah, you can.
Yes.
And it's
Definitely.
in some ways, it's like the show is here's where the Jedi were, and people are like, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see them like that.
Yeah.
Almost like too much of the truth. People were thinking,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
I want to see them. I want to see the high points. I want to see them with the glory.
Yeah.
Nope. This
That's
was
not
the
the show.
beginning of the
Yeah.
managers, bureaucrats, cover up.
Yeah, to cover up the dark
And-
coming
Yeah.
to power and rise and out there and knowing it and covering things up and
And in some ways, I think, the best mix of martial arts
Mm.
And-
Mhm.
and lightsaber fighting,
oh
hand-to-hand combat
Yeah,
of any movie or show. I think
Yeah.
it felt really true. I don't know how George Lucas feels about this, but I have to think combining samurai attitudes and the martial arts thought process of a Jedi, the religion and the fighting, the monk style.
yeah.
Yeah.
It felt really good. Even the
Yeah.
slow-mo stuff this past week, unbelievable.
It did.
Very
Oh, it was
Even like
amazing.
and when they chose to kind of like display the use of their force abilities within fighting.
Yeah.
Like even in that that final battle with Chimera and Soul, how they're falling, but then you just see them like
Controlling
float
it.
kind of back and controlling
Right.
it. It felt very. Yeah,
I was watching
even that,
Crouching
it
Tiger,
felt-
Hidden Dragon.
That's exactly
Yeah.
what I've been thinking.
Yeah,
For
Yeah.
sure.
Power, yeah.
Yeah,
Even the
I was,
rotating, sometimes the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is also famous for that. During the freeze, the rotating camera angle,
Yeah.
like that's the big Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Like some of the you get in the air and
Right.
then the camera pans, and then they continue the fighting.
And they had
They
that.
had
yeah,
that
Matrix
moment where
stuff
they
too,
come
too.
down and then they both use the force, and then the camera comes
Oh,
to
yeah.
the
that was
side
amazing.
and wheels around, swings around, and then as they start landing, then they continue fighting.
Yeah.
And I thought that
yeah,
was, I thought that was really
yeah.
I thought it was in some ways the most tragic because I feel it was maybe misunderstood more than any other show.
yeah.
It was maybe not what people expected.
Yeah,
Surprise.
yeah.
And when you do that, that's daring. And it doesn't always. People don't always get on.
The thing
board.
is, I see though, having seen now the whole season, I see why some of the quotes were what they were, which was like this.
You mean the
is-
quotes from the creator?
Yeah,
Yeah, from
this
Leslie
this
Headland.
this is a dark side show.
Yeah.
This is a journey of the dark side.
Yep.
This shows some of the abilities, some of the secrets that were out there.
Mm-hmm.
Even though a lot of it did follow the High Republic Jedi.
Yeah.
Throughout, it wasn't always just on May and Osha.
Mhm.
It showed a lot of, the Jedi throughout too. It was a journey of a fall, of a fallen. Kind of Jedi. She was
Beginning
a
of
Jedi,
the-
but yeah, it was a dark side. So I see why some of those early quotes where people were like, "Oh, this is like all like dark side and the nuances of the dark side." And stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe not quite what people expected,
Mhm.
but I wouldn't say though what was said was wrong. Having now seen the finale and being like, "Oh, this was the journey the
Yeah.
whole time."
Yeah.
But yeah, and in the same way, I echo what both you guys are saying. I could see if you're someone who is like, you heard at Star Wars Celebration, or you heard at the announcement a few years ago, Dark Side show, and then your mind maybe starts going to like, oh, okay, so like we're gonna get like, okay, the Jedi are
A
off
master
doing
and
here,
an
so we're gonna
apprentice.
get a master and an apprentice, and they're in this Sith temple, and they're training them, and they're teaching them these things.
Yeah.
and
They're going on
showing this.
missions.
They're
Yeah.
doing these scientific experiments to try to crack some new dark side ability,
Yeah.
like the Plagueis
Yeah.
type of a thing. Which again, that could be like if there is a season 2, could be where it could be going.
Yeah.
But it's also, but it's just because that's what somebody might get in their head. I'm not saying people are wrong to think that, because my mind went there when they announced the show. It was
Yeah,
like, oh, I wonder
yeah.
what this is. But they stayed true to what they said the show was about, which was there was a couple of quotes that Leslie Headland said before the show started, which is she pitched the show as Kill Bill meets Frozen, is what she said initially, which
Oh.
was really interesting.
Yeah.
And without any context, we were like, oh, I wonder what that means.
I can see that.
then very much
Yeah.
so you get two sisters. Okay,
Yeah.
this is Frozen.
Yeah.
The show's about, in Mother Anastasia's words, power and who's allowed to yield it. That's completely Frozen as
Yep.
far as like you have this, but suppress it.
Sisters
don't do it.
separated, misunderstanding.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which of the sister? One of the sister actually has power that's even dangerous to the other sister.
Uh-huh.
And then Kill Bill is obviously the first few episodes of
Right.
this, which is literally you're on my hit list and
Yep.
I am going
Here
to
we
kill
go.
you. Here we go.
Yeah.
And then talking about the dark side stuff, obviously that's I think that this finale is very interesting to me because it does. So it really paints the whole show as dark side by the end of this.
Yeah.
Like the whole show is meaning a
Even-
dark side focused
Even
show.
even the actions of the Jedi,
Yeah.
the lying and the cover up and the killing and
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So my
Yeah.
overall thoughts too. I agree with what both of you guys said. I think I definitely have some mixed feelings on certain moments in the episode that I'm like, oh, I think that this show had. So overall, I really liked the show. I really liked it. I think I have, not to compare the two always, because I think, I have similar feelings of certain moments as I did kind of when I came out of The Last Jedi, to be honest, of where I'm like, I kind of have to sit with that moment or
As
that
an
thing
interesting choice, or
because it was so not what I expected
yeah.
that I have to sit with it, and that doesn't mean it's good or bad. Anyone who's watched the show knows The Last Jedi is one of my favorite Star Wars things. Certainly one of my favorite things that's happened in the Disney era, but one of my favorite Star Wars films of all time. And I'm not. It's way too early for me to say where this like show falls on the hierarchy of the Star Wars shows for me, because again, clearly this show was written as a season 1 with more to come.
Yeah.
And so that's also hard to kind of judge it as a whole when what would if the Empire Strikes Back was the last Star Wars movie that George Lucas ever made, you would be like, oh, interesting. It really ended on a very cold, sad,
Right.
hopeless note.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting knowing that Leslie Headland and they've had a bunch of even interviews of like, yeah, in season 2 we would want to do this or we want to do this. With the numbers of the show being what they are, which we talked a little bit about off camera, we don't know. I think at best it's up in the air of whether
Yeah,
or not
right
season
above
2 is
Boba
gonna happen.
Fett.
Yeah.
Right above Boba
Fill them
Fett.
in. What are the
Yeah.
numbers?
Well, Uncle was
Let's
looking
talk
them
about
up.
it real
It's second
quick.
lowest viewership wise. Do you think of?
And it started out. We said at
Started out high.
And-
second highest, right?
Yeah, and
lot of people
among
dropped
the
off of it,
highest
too.
among the highest budget. So
Yeah.
on the
So-
viewership side, second lowest. On the spending side, I think the highest, 187 million.
And
Maybe season 3 Mando is. I can't remember the spending. Anyway, they
as
put it
much
at
as-
the highest cost per viewer.
yes.
Per
Yeah,
viewership.
and the
Yeah.
episodes were really short, so it was a
Yeah.
high budget with a short runtime. So
Yeah.
there's a number of things that maybe are stacked against it, unfortunately. And I do think, as much as I disagree with a lot of the criticism, I screenshot a couple things that were interesting. That
Yeah.
there were some Star Wars accounts out there who tweeted, "Hey guys, 2 hours before Acolyte finale drops, and just wanted to let you know, here's the reviews people have already written about the finale on IMDb." So like, people are already we're tanking the show. So what I'm saying is, like, there were fans who, in bad faith, wanted the show to fail. And I have my criticisms of some. We'll get to some things of like nitpicks of like, oh, I think this had a great idea that for me, execution wise, maybe didn't always hit. But also, there was so much more of this show that I'll talk about the stuff that I thought I was a little more mixed on. But there's so much more of this finale and this show as a whole that, having seen now the full season, I really enjoy and also really understand, I think, what the writers and what Leslie Headland, the showrunner, and everyone was going for. That I also think that some of the criticism of the show actually there's a lot of criticism that's warranted, I feel like, in most of these shows. But there's some that also feels very foolish from some of the people who were like, from episode 3 on of this show, you had people, whether it's big Star Wars YouTubers, people online, who were being like, okay, this makes no sense. This show is stupid because now Soul survived that attack. Soul survives, or I guess that'd be episode 4 or 5 on. But Soul survives this attack when the stranger
Yeah.
Chimera wipes out all these Jedi, and Ki-Adi-Mundi doesn't. They don't. Ki-Adi-Mundi's alive during this time period, and then in the Phantom Menace, they say the Sith have been extinct for millennium. Like everyone should know that the Sith are back because it was completely because the Sith wiped everyone out. And this finale shows don't say that stuff until the show is wrapped because you don't know what information is going to get back. And just because something happens in episode 5 and none of the council or Yoda or anything know about it, whether you like the decisions or not, this episode completely answers that, which is they blamed it all on Soul.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And Vernestra is the only person at this point who truly knows what's going on. And she has ulterior motives because of her connection to Chimera.
They hid it from the council at first. They didn't know what happened.
Intentionally. That was also, if you look,
exactly what
and if you look back,
there is no Sith.
And made it so definitive of not like we don't know what happened. They actually say, this guy is dead, and so I am pinning it on him. And she says, not only did he die, we think he even killed himself because he could not live because of how despicable
his guilt.
This Jedi was. His guilt. He did this years ago, so they blame they obviously. And again, we know that he killed her mother. But there's also we saw the story of how complicated and what actually happened,
and we saw that Vernestra Rowe went in and like
she went in and immediately goes you.
And no. But I mean, even when she walked in, she has that ability like Ahsoka
to sense what actually
to like almost visualize what actually happened when she's in a space.
Yeah,
and
even that long ago.
Even that long ago.
That was
she was there, and we see it and we hear it playing out. So like she clearly knew what happened.
Mm-hmm.
They were showing that she knew what happened, and then still blamed it all on Soul to cover up her whatever her connection is to Chimera. Probably her Padawan or something at some point. She's trying to cover up his fall or his protection or something.
They made it very clear that she is not misunderstanding what happened.
She's not misunderstanding. She is intentionally covering things up.
When we're talking about the things about the show that I have to wrestle with a little bit, and not like wrestle with like I think it was a bad thing, but like whoa, I've never seen as much as I've seen the Jedi struggle in the Phantom Menace, and this I think is what I think the show does really well. It is a great direct tie to where we get to in the Phantom Menace, where Palpatine is under their noses. And they are so bureaucratic, and they're so just caught up in the every. I mean, at that point, the Jedi have, not in the Phantom Menace, but by Attack of the Clones, the Jedi have taken rank in the military. They're military generals. We talk about one of the best scenes in this whole finale, or maybe even the best in this show for me, is Senator Rayencourt, I think is his name, who was introduced in this show. Who I thought this guy is a scene stealer completely.
Yeah. Oh, he's amazing.
Comes in the weight, the gravitas of his performance, you immediately like this dude is an important senator who comes in and has his conversation, obviously with Vernestra about. She's like, I don't think you like the Jedi, or this, and he says, actually, you know what I think? I think you don't like the Jedi because of this, and she's like, frankly, yeah, that's true. He's like, okay, do you want to know what I think? And then boom, I think you're unchecked. He calls them a cult.
Mm-hmm.
This show is about a powerful senator and people in the Senate who also have power, and they're afraid of other people who have power because they don't know what you're going to do with the power, and then they're afraid of what you're going to do with the power, and you're going to do it. But what was interesting is his line and Mother Anastaea's line of all of your good intentions are going to lead to the destruction
of all the Jedi
of everybody, and he says in this, I loved the twist of we've heard people in The Last Jedi. The Force is not a thing that a power that the Jedi own, and they talk about that. And you think that's where this conversation is going, where she says like, "Oh, you think you have control over this dangerous thing?" And she's like, "We don't control the Force." He's like, "Your emotions. I'm talking about the Force. Your emotions. You think you can suppress your emotions to the point until one of you is going to snap."
Isn't that interesting? Have you guys ever thought about that before?
Yeah.
Are the Jedi is part of being a Jedi to suppress your emotion? Like a Vulcan in Star Trek. Is that one of their tenets? Is it part of being a Jedi?
I think
at the core of the Jedi belief system, is it avoid
Based off-
emotion.
Here's
I
the
think
thing.
not.
Based off,
I think that's gotten to that place. I think that it's don't act on your don't recognize them. I think the Jedi, if they're at their healthiest,
Because you can't react in anger.
I don't think it
You can't
always
react in fear.
Recognize that fear and anger are there, but
You
don't
can't
act
give
on them.
yourself to another person in love.
Yeah, now that I do think
Yeah.
is that's the trick.
interesting,
that's the tricky
right?
One, because
Yeah.
I don't think love is obviously a bad thing. I do think acting, anger, fear, those things. Yoda talks about the warnings of like, yes, the quick and quick to comfort you in a battle, like quick to tap into those. And yes,
Right.
there's a lot of power there as a Force user. That's why Chimera says tap in your negative emotions. It's the most powerful thing. So I do think if the Jedi, if at their healthiest, if the Jedi are healthy, so that's what we always get to, like, what is the Jedi actual tenet and how are the Jedi behaving?
Well, I think
'Cause
you
don't
see it
think
in
they're
the-
always. I don't think they're always the same. Although the love one is tricky because I don't think love obviously is a negative emotion. But I think that
They're not allowed to be attached to any one
that's-
person.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that part of it, that thing of what they say about love, I do think is dangerous or is tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when you see it in the High Republic books, which are even years before what we see at this, which is kind of more towards the end of the High Republic, you see them kind of wrestle with that question even more so, as opposed to what we see here, which is kind of the suppression,
Yeah.
is beginning to suppress that emotion of
Yeah.
attachment and like loving. And I mean that's part of Soul's reason for even his attraction to helping May is that he genuinely had a
Yeah.
connection with her and felt
That's right.
that he wanted to provide an opportunity for her.
Right.
And then that suppression becomes more and more and more, I think, and that's where we lead to that downfall in what we see the prequels.
Yeah.
What we see of Anakin and the snapping that they mention, someone's going to snap. Whereas in the High Republic books, you see them wrestle with the question a little bit more, and they pose like even the question of like attachments doesn't necessarily mean like a lack of attachment doesn't necessarily mean that we need to not love for or care for someone in a way or grieve because they talk about it like
Yeah.
Into the Dark, I believe it was, where they're talking about the idea of grieving and how they felt wrong for grieving because they felt like that was more of an attachment. Like I shouldn't have had this strong of attachment. I need to be able to let that go.
Yeah.
And they wrestle with this idea of like what's acceptable and what's not. And I think part of this downfall of the Jedi is them beginning to emphasize more and more of that suppression. Whereas toward the beginning of the High Republic, you
Well, they
see
had
you see
Jedi
it
in-
more commonly, and it was more so as used for what was good, which was people are in trouble. We're going to go help them. We're going to care for them rather
Yeah.
than not care really what happens and just do what legalistically is right.
Right. Well, there were the two Jedi that had in a relationship in The Light and the Jedi, weren't there?
Yeah.
There were
Yeah, I
two
think
that-
they were. Yeah,
They were actually-
teased. They teased
Right,
the
right,
connection
right.
there of that relationship. Yeah,
And it's interesting. Back High Republic days, they would connect with the Force over
Big time.
miles. Their connection, they could use that
yeah,
to get to help as
yeah.
a Force power to connect. And now it feels like they're
And
the
it
idea
definitely
is
goes to the
disconnect.
extreme where you then talk about the Jedi. I think at least many many members of the actual High Council of the council that we get in the Phantom Menace actually also lack empathy. Like
Yeah.
now, like they don't feel. There's a reason
Yeah.
George Lucas wrote into like, what do you feel? And Anakin goes, cold, sir. Like, little Annie is actually like cold because
Yeah.
I feel like you all don't want me here. I'm
Right.
a child. And
Yeah.
I feel already that like just the
Well,
you
I
are
can
so
feel it
by
already.
like
Yeah.
you're so by the letter of we don't have emotions that you're actually treating me poorly. Like you're actually
Yeah.
driving me towards any longing for some emotion rather than just like
Yeah.
being where I think Qui-Gon is not that. Qui-Gon shows love towards Anakin
That's
like
right.
fatherly love.
Yeah.
Does that and like that would be my example of I think it being like a healthier doing but Qui-Gon wasn't by the book. which is like, so that's what's interesting is what, or wasn't by what the council acted like at that time. They thought Qui-Gon was too much of stepping over the line of this, or too much.
Right,
of that
which
is. So
which,
it is
yeah.
it's a good debate of what actually is what they're supposed to be.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
What their actual like.
What
They're
should the
following the letter of their Jedi law.
Yeah.
What is that? What does
yeah,
that
and
look
if
like?
if Qui-Gon and
If so,
some of
is it right?
these characters are not going by the book of the order, and we see this downfall continuing to happen at different moments in the timeline, at what point is the book wrong?
Yeah,
At what
yeah,
point is their
at what point-
interpretation of things wrong with with the whole idea of the attachment and stuff? And that's part of their hubris is that some of that led to that.
Yeah. One of the things I think is interesting about this show is that it drives you to think about big, overarching
There's a lot of moral
ideas.
and even just like pinpoint moral moments where
Yeah.
you're like, what do I do?
I think this show, the viewership aside, I think this show is a pivotal. Now we hear a lot of things in Obi-Wan about what happened and how it occurred. We hear Andor sets up a lot of things and how it occurred.
Yeah.
This, I think, is going. I think it could, as time progresses, show us it's a very important linchpin moment
Yeah.
where the Jedi, the scale tipped. I think it tipped,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it pushed everything toward Plagueis, which and now we know
Yeah.
Osha
Yeah.
and Chimere and Palpatine. All of that is right this moment, and I
Yeah.
think the Acolyte pushes it the other way, and it starts tipping
Yeah.
toward
Yeah.
the dark side.
Yeah.
And it ultimately leads to the Order 66. That's where we get to.
Yeah.
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 I think that's
And
good.
this is the beginning of it.
I think that's
Yeah.
a good comparison. While I think the shows are very different shows and have like obviously different writing styles, longer episodes, different. Andor is that moment to the rebellion.
The tilt on the rebellion side.
On the rebellion
That's
side
right.
is this is to the Jedi Sith side.
Right.
Yeah.
Is Andor?
This is the beginning of the end of the Jedi.
Andor is the thing that gets the ball rolling down the hill. Where now it's like this is it now can't be stopped until we get to actually.
That's Empire Rebellion. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And
Andor lets not
like
necessarily,
Obi-Wan
not
is
necessarily
more-
lets. I guess the Empire tried to stop him, but Andor succeeds in letting the rebels get to a point where okay, now the word's getting out and people
Tipping
are
point.
starting to turn and start
Yes.
joining the rebellion. This is through Vernestra and just the outcome of what has happened. That tipping point of we're gonna let this slide, and now we're covering things up, and this is the beginning of
Mhm.
that rise.
this is also so. I said this last podcast, and I feel this more than ever after watching the finale. I think, and now watching the whole show. And I don't mean this negatively at all. I mean this more positively about how I like talking about the show. I said last podcast that I think I enjoy talking about the show even more than I enjoy the specific show. Even though I enjoy
I
the
love
show.
breaking it down and talking.
Yeah,
Yeah,
meaning this show is.
we
there
got
are
Anakin
shows,
in the
there are
chat.
shows
Welcome.
we've had. There are shows we've had that, frankly, if you were to put me on the spot right now, that I would say I probably would like rank higher in my personal Star Wars ranking of shows or whatever.
Yep.
There are shows that I would be like, I gravitate more towards
Yeah,
maybe my feeling of how I enjoy watching this type of a show or a different show maybe over this sometimes. But this show is so much deeper and more complex and has so much more things to talk about. Like, meaning, I love Mando. When we discuss Mando, there's not a lot. There is predictions of lore. There's predictions of.
But there's
I
not-
wonder what this character's decision is going to be.
there was not a ton of mystery.
There's not
really.
yet there, and again, not every show has to.
No.
But this show has like I'm still thinking through right now of like we're 30 minutes into this podcast and we haven't even got to some of the specific moments of
I
know.
that's happened because there's these big overall things that I'm still wrapping my head around, which I
Yeah.
think is great because I love shows that have discussions. So one thing to talk about here is maybe we start getting to the specifics of the show, but one more overarching thing. This show, I think Ken Knapsack on Force Center pointed this out. I saw it this morning, and I thought it was a really interesting point. We were talking about how different this show is that this show, The Last Jedi, is a show that critiques the Jedi, their fall, and does these things that points out and says through characters, this happened and this happened and this is what I think about the Jedi Order, this, and then in Act 3 gives its mission statement of, and here's where I think all the things these characters said are either correct or incorrect.
Yep.
And also here's the hope at the end of it.
That's right.
Is that the Jedi are, do they make mistakes? Yes, but overall they're much more good. They fall from that, but it is a noble cause worth following, worth fighting for.
Will not
the
be
galaxy. Yeah, it will not be the last Jedi.
Yeah.
The galaxy is not hopeless. This, it is all about what you choose. And there's hope going into the next one, even though it's a dark movie.
Yeah.
There's hope going into the next one. This show is like that without Act 3. Because the show is written right now, it's clearly multiple seasons to come, and we don't was written as if a following season was to come.
Yep.
But this show is pretty hopeless, or has very little specific hope. Where at the end of this, our Jedi have actually not just had a horrific thing that they were a part of 16 years ago. But in the current time period of how it wraps up, is that then another Jedi, Vernestra Rwoh, pins it all on Sol.
Yeah.
Sol dies. It's tragic for us to see someone who we know maybe made some mistakes because or I would argue even definitely Sol made some mistakes. We can debate as to what they are.
He tried to probably do the most
but
that
at
he
the
could.
end, dies, and even in the moment in which he's dying, he ends up being killed by the person that he went in to save, and we think was actually we know it's complicated, but it was a noble cause that he legitimately thought she was in danger. And yes, he had some personal things involved that he wanted a Padawan, and we talked about this in the past, that there are some different drives, but he thought she was really in danger. And now 16 years later, it's not even the dangerous sister. It's actually the one he had a relationship with, brought in as a Jedi. She saw him as a father, all this stuff, that she force chokes him and kills him without a lightsaber in the way that Chimere.
Well, and he gives her permission.
In
which
the
is
moment,
almost worse. It's like
in the moment, he's like, it's okay. Basically, it was so Shakespearean.
Was he saying it's okay to do this, or I forgive you?
Yeah, I think that's I don't think
the
it was
first
more
one is worse. The first one is way worse. It's okay to go ahead and turn.
I think that a good Jedi.
I think he was saying, "I forgive you."
Yeah, I think it was more like
so.
I forgive you. Yeah.
Yeah.
But this show did not have a hopeful ending by any means, because
No.
then the Jedi who does survive and knows about it, then she doubles down into the dark of now we're first seeing the actual first ever on screen of not Jedi fall to the dark side and become a Sith, but Jedi who is actively a Jedi and high ranking or high up in the Jedi kind of order, purposefully lie, pin murders on a different Jedi, cover up the whole thing, and do all that in the name of also she has a secret, because we know that she has a secret with Chimera that she doesn't want people to know. She never even mentions to anyone else.
Yeah.
He's out there now.
And if you look back, she was also the one who, from the beginning, whether she knew Chimera was alive or not, did not want to take things to the council. She was the one who said, "No, we can handle this."
Right.
It was almost like she had a hunch that even though later on is when we see her say, "Oh, you're alive." It seemed like there was still, even before she really knew, it seemed like there was still a hunch that these killings were going on, and she's like, "Is it possible that he's alive?" And then we actually see her say it on screen of, "You're alive."
And this was her. Seems like her this is her MO. This is like, oh, I know how to deal with this. We don't tell them. We just
Also
like
interesting
she's
that she
done that
wants
and
to
she's
go
challenged.
to.
Yeah,
Done that
exactly. And she was
before.
challenged on
keep
it
this
too.
on the down low.
Also
And
interesting
she's
though
like,
that what do we think she's going to Yoda about at the end? to actually fill him in on Chimera? Because then wouldn't Yoda be like, lied, you did? Like, you just told everyone all this lie about the murders and stuff. Like, she would be kicked out of the council.
It seemed like,
or she'd be kicked out of the order. But
who
Yoda,
was she
like,
telling?
You're telling me now after you pinned all this stuff on?
It seemed like she was telling the senators.
But I'm saying, what is she saying to Yoda?
First, and then I took it as now she's going to Yoda to tell him the same thing.
The same thing.
Like, she told that to all the senators, and now she's going to Yoda.
Down, but will Yoda? The question will then be: does Yoda buy it?
Does Yoda buy it or not? Yeah. But now it's her going to Yoda to
fill in the High Council,
to say
to
say this is what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now he's telling the High. Yeah. Now she's.
I'm telling you, this show has made me think more about the Jedi, the philosophy, the big picture of the dark side. It's challenging, and I don't think any other show has challenged the deception of the Jedi, because they've done it.
Which is hard.
All
this
of these
hard to swallow.
In every movie, the Jedi deceive,
and the ones that
starting with Obi-Wan Kenobi, they deceive in order to do something that they think is greater. There was this awesome
justify
quote.
The means by trying to say I'm deceiving you, but it's what Soul did.
Absolutely,
it's exactly what Soul did. Soul did. I did what was right.
I
did it to protect you. I lied to you all these years, but I did deceive you.
They're not always honest, and they've never had a show.
It's the same thing
deal with that.
Kenobi did. He told him I told him that Darth Vader betrayed and murdered your father.
That's exactly right.
I told you that.
Anakin did the same thing.
You couldn't handle the truth.
That led him to the dark. There was a great quote from George Lucas back in 2005. Here, another thing that bugs me about like the reaction of fans is they're watching from the outside and they don't realize that there are things behind the scene that these people have studied, and and Filoni is driving this boat. This is not.
People think
this is not Leslie Headland just making all these decisions.
People think that Ahsoka is Filoni's thing, and that Leslie Headland said even recently interviews, every single episode goes to Filoni's desk and he okays it.
Right.
And like he reads through. He's very much, even though he didn't create this show, his job at Lucasfilm now is nothing is getting made without his eyes on it.
Yeah.
And he's going through
and whether you like that or not, but it does go through that. There was a quote from George Lucas that said, often the Jedi do things and they think they're doing what's right, but actually it's not.
And that's what they said. This whole show was
the show.
Yeah. The whole show was they said it in the first episode. Was it the first episode?
Absolutely.
They said
Soul
we
said
thought
that.
what we were no, Torben
said that.
It was one of the first couple
Soul
episodes.
said that.
Soul doubles down in the finale.
Yeah.
Even in his big
right.
showdown.
He
says,
I was doing to protect you. Like,
I did what was right.
Also
I
very
did the
interesting
right thing.
is that he's not 16 years later, like, I
made a mistake.
I can't believe the mistake.
He
actually is like, I'm so sorry that hurt you, and he says his biggest regret is I couldn't save you both.
Right.
I don't have regret over intervening.
Yeah.
Which is still interesting because even I think that us as an audience is supposed to take that though as, oh, but I have questions about you intervening. Like,
that's right.
I didn't see that as clearly you did the right thing.
No,
I saw that
as
which is
I can
crazy
see from
because
your point of view why you got there, but then I can see by point of view why you had concern.
Yeah.
But then we also saw in the witch's perspective that while stuff was mysterious and dangerous, we didn't see them actively harming the children or anything. Like, we weren't sure exactly what the ascension is. Like, they did a number of things that were really interesting.
Yeah,
I think that were good. That were.
Soul did see them force pushing them to the ground, and not like.
But the
not
argument could be made that if you watched any Ahsoka Anakin training, Anakin walks out of the room and says,
again.
Get her.
Again.
She's getting knocked out by the troopers.
So I think it's wrong place, wrong time type deal. You walk in and see that, and her first question is alarming.
I think it was meant to challenge your idea of what about the Jedi makes them good, and what about the Sith makes them evil.
Yeah.
Is it their love? Is it their lack of love? Is it their lying? Is it their?
Because I want to get into
Chimera
this.
was he dishonest?
Yes, yeah. So he was.
Was he dishonest?
This is the thing.
I don't know. And
you were going to say something.
He is
Sorry.
manipulative.
Manipulative, but was he dishonest?
That's always the interesting thing. Is a lot of the things that Palpatine tells Anakin
is true.
Are true.
On the textbook are, if you put it through a
Yeah,
lie
the
detector
trust,
test, they are true.
His whole life is a
The
lie.
deception, yeah, true.
But
The deception though comes of, why are you telling me this right now?
Yeah.
Because
What's your
what-
motive?
What is your point? Why are you telling me this? Yes, it is
Yeah.
true that the Jedi have been not truthful. I'm just wondering why today at the Opera House you are in my ear telling me.
what does
about
this have to do
Yeah.
with me and you?
Why is
Yeah.
this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wanted to. I'm glad you said that because it reminded me of how I felt at the very end of the episode. And I was watching it, and I remember actively thinking, I feel like I'm watching the ending of something that should be good, but I know it's bad. They're having for the first time, we see like a heartfelt moment leading someone down a path that we know is tragic. But we're sitting there watching it and taking it in as almost like, this feels like a heartfelt, feel-good moment that it should be, but we know it's not.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was very. Like I said, it was their perspective of what they thought was the emotion and things behind it. She May's a go. This is what you've always wanted. Not at all what she probably thinks is coming. But
Yeah.
it's interesting because it's highlighting kind of the nuances of the dark side and the fall and how people's emotions and stuff can kind of lead them down a path of what they think is not accurate.
Yeah.
What they feel is lying to them. Their emotions are lying to them. That even as a viewer, we're watching it, and I'm like, why do I feel like this should be a good, happy moment, but it's simultaneous because of the circumstances we know it's bad. Even Chimere's sitting there just like accepting it, taking it in. Like
they took a lot of. You're right. Absolutely right. And I had that feeling like, am I excited for her?
I know.
But people they took a lot of flack on this. What they throw in that Plagueis thing. We can talk about that.
Yeah.
You know why? Here's why. And this is so crucial. Everybody had to know that there is someone else behind it. So when that Plagueis comes in, I go, Chimere is being deceived.
Yeah.
Chimere is not in control.
I have a theory.
He is being used.
Yeah.
So this little romantic thing they got going on, this little, I'm telling you the truth. I want to, you can unlock all this power. You can unlock, and all this nice little
thing
thing
he was told.
that's happening, that they grab hands, look off into the sunset, Anakin, Padme. There is a devil behind this. That's what makes it sinister.
Yeah.
Without them, I get it. She's getting revenge. It's dark side. Totally get it. But they're both being used.
And
it's only because we saw.
And coming from a character
Plagueis.
who, even though there's still a lot of mystery behind Plagueis, canon-wise, it is coming from an established character that we know was Palpatine's master at one point, was tragic, was, we hear the story of Darth Plagueis the Wise.
Yeah.
And so it was important that it came from someone that we knew because we immediately knew the weight and the deception and evil behind. If it was someone that we just saw, if it was just some other person doing that, we're like, oh, there's someone there, but who was that?
Right.
Like, it doesn't carry the same weight.
And there are a lot of people that did that
because
they don't know.
well, yeah, well, that's true. But because it was someone that we know, and we have this sinister, knowing how strong Plagueis was, knowing his involvement with creating life, like there's so much to his character,
Right.
that even though there's a lot of mystery behind him, we know enough that we know how big of a threat and the looming, the weight of behind who is corrupt
And how
Chimere.
they use people.
Yeah.
People they're all a tool they're all something to get what he wants. Everybody's a tool to Plagueis.
I think there's imagery there too, like we were just talking about. I think it was good by Leslie Headland to, whether it was the intent or not. I think it definitely also comes off as, I like when this show. I like when, whether it's Andor or
there's
any
a good
shows,
question we'll get to in a second here.
Starts having these good debates of like when DJ says in The Last Jedi also of like, they do this to you today, they do this today, are you making a mistake? Well, maybe. Like they for a second play with the idea of there's no difference. There's just this side and there's that side.
That's right.
Like there's this and that. And then you have the actual boogeyman monster hand under the bed who creeps around the corner and
There's
goes,
a difference.
oh no, there's a difference.
That's the difference.
That's
Yeah.
the difference.
What it looks like.
That is the dark side.
And that's why
And so
I saw
Chimere
people
can
upset.
have this thing, whether
Chimere's
he's being
still
genuine
dabbling.
or not. Yes, this is.
Yeah.
You have so the show tricks you for a second to almost thinking like, I'm kind of rooting for not rooting for the dark side, but like, yeah, the Jedi, they lied to you, and
Killed her mother.
Man, they killed your mother, and that maybe is that really the light side? Is the dark side? Is there that big difference? And then this note on the music.
Does Chimere
and then
actually
the
want,
hand comes
like,
around the
her-
corner,
Yeah.
and you see this face, and you go, holy cow! Okay, well that's the dark side. So maybe we need to pump the brakes here.
At the heart of it, the action was out of love.
Yeah.
At the heart of it, the action is out of self.
Yes.
That's what the dark side is all about.
It's all about
Yeah.
it's all
Self.
Because I mean, what's
Power.
What's Chimere? Chimere's not saying, "I want to help someone." He's saying, "No, I want a pupil. I want someone that I can train that will be underneath me that I can probably have them do my bidding."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The rule of two. It's like I want my own. It's not. It's a
I have
selfish motive.
Yeah.
It's not because he's now the Jedi with their flaws. Still, they seek out younglings to train them up and help.
Yeah.
It's, their
Quick-
goal overall is to still help the galaxy.
That's
Yeah.
right.
But clearly, Chimere's saying these things and maybe does
Yeah.
want her to do this, but is saying it because it's all selfish motive.
Quick rapid fire here because now
There's a good
I'll have
question I want to get to also.
Let's
but-
get to that, and then I have to wrap in about 10 minutes. I'll
Okay.
have to leave because
So-
I've got a couple. I got a Plagueis question I want to ask about the Plagueis.
Okay.
Darth and
Let's do it.
might be related. Darth in the chat says, "Hello guys, just want to leave one question. Do you think